Hello, Caveman Leaflang here. Everything is growing. We can't get a haircut. By the time this is all over, my hair will be on the floor. But anyway, so I just finished the session, and I figured while I have this up here, I'm going to talk about item number 3 of Dig My Rig. And you probably guessed it if you were watching my or following my Instagram account. So this is, does it say on the serial number? 1982. So actually the backstory of this is I used to work at or help out at a recording studio in Staten Island, New York called Phoenix Studios. Shout out to Tony and the guys and the girls. I used to do sessions there and also take care of the drums. It's also a rehearsal facility. And at one point I cleaned out literally cleaned out the closet there, and we found a 14-inch, I think it was 10 by 14 Superstar Tom. It was an orphan Tom that didn't belong to any kit or anything. So we were going to throw it out. It was all discolored. It's actually behind me, but anyway, I'll make this as short as I can. So I decided to take that drum home rather than throw it out, and I cut it from 8-inch depth from 10-inch depth to 8-inch depth, and I made that into a snare drum, and it came out pretty cool. It's not perfect, but it was a cool experiment. But I really like the Superstar shells, and as you know, I have or may know, you'll probably noticed in some of my other videos or pictures that I love Superstar drums, and I have a Superstar kit. But these shells are just fantastic. As opposed to a lot of other vintage drums, these shells will not go out around. They just stay in really great shape, no matter how beat up they may look. So anyway, I figured I'd give that another try. This is probably about 5 years ago. And I scored another 14-inch Tom shell, 10-inch deep, I think it was. Might have been 13-inch deep, actually. I think it was 13-inch deep. So I cut that shell in half and made 2 snare drums out of it. I have my own router table, and I know a little bit about building drums. I've built some other drums in my days. So yeah, it came out really cool. This one I think is 5 1/4 inch deep. And then the other one I built for my buddy Marco, that one is, I believe, 6 1/4 inch deep. We tried to keep the existing holes used as much as possible, so there's no extra holes anywhere. There are a couple extra holes in here, but because it's kind of inevitable, but we reused as many as we could when Marco and I sort of over texting laid out the shell configurations for the 2 snare drums. So anyway, give you a couple close-ups if it'll focus. And the finish on this thing is really nice still. I put just a regular screw-on grommet in this. I had to actually file out the hole in the badge to be able to reuse it. Got original Superstar lugs on it from the 70s or 80s from Cade Cap. Also known as Drums for Days on Instagram. He's sort of the Tama authority in the world. I think he pretty much owns every Tama drum that was ever made. Or I should say one of every drum that was made. So I recut the edges to the original profiles, the top and the bottom. I'm not sure if this will translate, but and maybe like this. And I hand filed the snare bed. I'm not sure that is focusing. Anyway, came out really, really nice. And I was actually saying in one of my previous videos about that maple snare drum, how I'm not really a fan of wooden snare drums much. This is the other one. This is the other exception, I should say. So this guy, this is birch. This is, I believe, a 6-ply birch shell. It was never meant to be a snare drum, but the shell works great for snare drums. So this, and they both happen to be Tama, but this wooden snare and the maple one are really the only wooden snares I use. This one is a little more temperamental than the maple. The maple always sounds great. This guy sounds great most of the time. There will be periods of times where I just can't get it to sound right, and then I'll just leave it on the shelf for a little bit, and then a few months later I pick it back up and it's just killing. It definitely likes to be higher up in the tuning. When you go too low, it gets, but you know, as I explained in the other video, that's kind of, in my opinion, pretty much every wooden snare drum has that, unless you start using a ton of tape. I have 2 little pieces of tape on here just to tame it a little bit, but it doesn't really need a lot of work as far as trying to dial this drum in. So yeah, came out really cool. It's actually kind of perfect. I didn't screw up anything about this drum. The edges are great. Lugs are on there good. I put a trick throw off on here because that's my favorite. See if I can get that in there. So it's just the only throw off that really seems to work and not loosen if you're hitting it really hard. The hoops on here are World Max hoops. They came out with a new type of die-cast hoop like 5 or 6 years ago. It's a little thinner, it looks. It doesn't have that extra thick top that classic die-cast hoops have. So I don't know, I haven't compared it with classic die-cast hoops, but they're really cool, and the rim shots are just absolutely insane on this thing. So let me give you a little taste. It's just tuned however it was on my last session that I used it on. It just pops, you know, and when you avoid the rim, it's pretty fat. It has a pretty fat attack, and it has a little bit more low end. Then when you really lay into it with a rim shot, it's like a gunshot. And sensitive too. The snare wires are responding all the way to the very edge of the drum. So, you know, it's tuned pretty high, but I wouldn't want to say this is a one-trick pony, but I'm not going to really mess with the tuning with the tuning of this drum today, because it just sounds perfect where it is right now. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So anyway, that is this Tama Superstar converted tom, and yeah, there will be more to come. There's a lot more snare drums, and there will be some cymbals. And until then, wash your hands, stay inside, and I'll see you very soon.